champion boxing and sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Leave that donation for that fried rice and chicken wings. Now listen. Daniel Dubois is being trained by Don Charles. Don Charles was Derek Chisora's trainer. Now what makes all of this interesting, right, is Derek Chisora is 100% Team AJ. Well, that's what we have to understand, where the lines of loyalty begin and end for Derek Chisora. Because you better believe that Derek Chisora I don't think he's being neutral here. I really think he wants AJ to win. Now, is he going to do as some have suggested? Okay, that's outside. I thought one of my little ones he woke up just now. But anyway, is he going to do what some have suggested, and for Derek Chisora now to go over to AJ's camp and just spill the beans on all of Don Charles' secrets? Because obviously there's some things that Don Charles knows and he's been able to share that with Daniel Dubois and help bring Daniel Dubois along. And I think that enabled Daniel Dubois' nuts to drop. Because Daniel Dubois in his last 3 fights has looked pretty impressive. Now, there's some things Daniel Dubois has done that I think Don Charles has brought out of him. Being more aggressive and being okay to fight a little dirty too. To understand that boxing is a gentleman's sport, but the sole objective is for you to win. So, got a little Malcolm X in him. By any means necessary, make the referee do his job. But I'm not sure if Derek Chisora just totally gave to Anthony Joshua 100% of the science behind Don Charles and his training. But I'm pretty sure he probably gave him a little heads up about some things that he needs to be cognizant of as he enters the fight with Daniel Dubois. Now for me, I'm like, damn, Chisora, would he sell out Don Charles? Because we know he's Team AJ, right? Chisora is 100% Team AJ. But I started asking questions like, why? Who is Don Charles? You know what I'm saying? Remember, I'm not from the UK, but the only thing I know about him is he trained Derek Chisora. He got his jaw broken by David Haye in that brouhaha between David Haye and Derek Chisora after Chisora fought Klitschko. But I didn't know much about him because I'm like, how is he qualified to be a trainer? Especially a trainer who's been able to take Derek Chisora, who to me is a brawler, into fights to get wins that Derek Chisora shouldn't have won, and to come now and take Daniel Dubois to get wins in fights Daniel Dubois should not have won. So I said, I'm a little curious about this guy. So anyway, let me give you a little bit of information about Don Charles. He's in his 60s, and he was born Charles Onyeneke. Now, he's been consistently referred to as a Nigerian, so he's from Nigeria, but was born in what, until the end of a harrowing 4-year civil war, was known as the Republic of Biafra. So he was born into some pretty extenuating circumstances. It goes on in this article that came out. It says, in reality, Charles could easily have joined the million plus, including friends and family, who died through famine, fighting, and disease, and was saved only by the fact that his father, a banker, regularly learned of imminent attacks in enough time for them to make their escape from one of the numerous towns or villages in which they stayed. Now, it was his father's profession that brought Charles, who was 14 at the time, and his siblings to London. They came in 1974. Now, at that time, it ensured a young passion for boxing was able to firmly grow inside of Don Charles. See, Muhammad Ali at that time had shocked the world by beating George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle on October 30th. And because of his move to London, Charles was in a position to watch and became enthralled. During his days as a young amateur fighter at Brixton, you always hear AJ talk about Brixton. You hear, Dillian White talk about Brixton. But during his days as a young amateur fighter, so Don Charles fought as an amateur. At Brixton ABC, he adopted his mother's maiden name to fight under the name Charlie Inney. Charles took his first steps into one of several industries in which he would succeed. He opened in London 4 market stools and 2 high street shops selling women's clothing, but with the lingering feeling that he had unfinished business. Charles, a more senior figure at his gym when Danny Williams and Julius Francis were progressing, started participating in unlicensed fights. Perhaps appropriately, his business interests evolved, and instead of retail, earned a lucrative contract to provide security on doors in Brixton. Charles demanded his doormen train with him if they wanted to work, and his belief grew that he still had a future in boxing, even if it was then still almost 2 decades away. So he was a kind of tough guy. Very confident, very brave. So that would explain how he got involved in boxing. He fought as an amateur and seemed to kind of like that lifestyle. So one step in that direction came in a frightening episode when local gangsters threatened Charles with his life and forced him to concede the security contract he had been given. His days working with doors regardless continued, albeit in London's less hostile West End. On one night, he still feared he was going to be shot outside of one of his posts. He had also endured a car being driven into one of those he had previously held, before a chance meeting led to his commitment to boxing full time. Now, in the years after Charles opened and sold a local flower shop that under his ownership provided the flowers to Miss World 2000, Derek Chisora, the heavyweight with whom Charles will forever be associated, came to his attention wearing a Finchley Amateur Boxing Club t-shirt and a petrol garage encounter in the North London town. A brief conversation resulted in them training together just a fortnight later, so 2 weeks later, and eventually Charles succeeding John Oliver as his full-time trainer. So Don Charles took over for Derek Chisora when Derek Chisora was an amateur. That's why there's that association and that connection between the two. That's why I just have a hard time seeing Derek Chisora just totally selling his trainer out. Because that guy, Don Charles, Derek Chisora owes him a whole lot for what Derek Chisora went on to become in the sport of boxing. Though then inexperienced, Charles had both ambitions and a vision. The difficult Chisora, a stubborn character short of natural talent, was dismissed in his amateur days as lacking the ability to succeed as a professional, but was paid to fight for the first time in February 2007 in an era when the domestic heavyweight scene so desperately needed to be revived. Now, in his 13th fight with Charles in his corner, Chisora stopped Charles' one-time gymmate Williams to win the British title. So Chisora won a British title under Don Charles. Charles was also in his corner for his 3 fights with Tyson Fury, his 2 fights with Dillian White, his fight with Klitschko, and the fight with David Haye that followed the fight. At the press conference, they left Charles with a broken jaw, all demonstrating Chisora's limitations at the highest level were defeats, but together they recorded victories over Malik Scott, Carlos Takam, and Kubrat Pulev on nights he was widely expected to lose. So that gives you a little background into Don Charles, who he is, where he's from, how he got involved with boxing, how he came across Chisora. And you can see that Chisora, where Chisora made it in the sport of boxing, Chisora really wasn't supposed to be here. And the reason he's here, Don Charles has everything to do with that. And now you see that Don Charles has all the experience in the world. And I think Daniel Dubois is benefiting greatly from having Don Charles. And maybe I should give Dubois and Charles more credit than what I want to give them. Because, of course, I suspect, I still wonder how Dubois get heart. How does he get punch resilience? How does he get this outstanding stamina and endurance? So to me, you know what I said? I said maybe he's on the cocktail. However, when you look at Don Charles and understand how long he's been involved with boxing, from an amateur to the professional levels, the highest levels of the sport, maybe Don Charles has learned something along the way, and he's been able to impart that to a more physically and athletically talented fighter in Daniel Dubois, opposed to what he had in Derek Chisora. And maybe that's why things are coming together for Daniel Dubois. And maybe, you know, again, I'm just speculating and having a conversation. Maybe Derek Chisora doesn't want to ruin. Maybe it's not about Daniel Dubois to Derek Chisora. Maybe it's about Don Charles and not wanting to take away from his glory and spill all the beans on whatever secrets Don Charles may have. Because Derek Chisora is 100% Team AJ. But I don't see Derek Chisora burning that bridge of Don Charles, just knowing what Don Charles has done for him in his career. Anyway, pretty interesting to me. With that being said, I think a couple of days, a week after the fight, we'll find out. I think we'll find out if Derek Chisora may have given up a little information about Don Charles to Team AJ, because Don Charles is very vocal and very emotional, and I can see him talking about that. But if Chisora didn't do it, I don't think we won't hear anything. But nonetheless, I expect a really good fight between AJ and Dubois. I give it, I don't know what, 2 rounds maybe. I actually think the first 10 seconds AJ kills him with the first big shot he lands. But first round AJ kind of jabs, plods along, feels him out. But if Dubois is coming full steam ahead, all gas, no brakes, AJ tranquilizes him. As soon as Dubois steps to him, AJ will tranquilize him. So I think if Dubois is going to come out guns blazing like he's saying, I get the shit first 5 seconds. If that's what happens, boom, AJ knocks him out. If he kind of just, jabs and takes his time going to the second round, then he decides to advance and AJ tranquilizes him then. AJ's going to sit back and counterpunch. And Dubois is going to get his ass severely knocked out. But you never know till they fight, right? Anyway, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans. All 7 continents. In the breeze.